Hi, quick reminder. The opinions and views expressed by my guests in this episode don't necessarily reflect mine or those of the show. Not every episode, but some episodes this season we talk about very deep, serious subjects. So if at any point you need to take a pause from listening or watching, please do so. Your mental well-being is far more important to me than any listener metrics, and the show will always be here when you're ready to come back. All right? Let's go. Hi, I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today, I'm joined by Mark Iddon, Senior Commissioning Editor, Comedy Entertainment at UKTV, for a relaxed two-way conversation about his journey, the lessons he's learned, and what it takes to lead with creativity and honesty. Mark, hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Adam. Glad to be here.
Likewise. So just to sort of be fully transparent with everyone listening or watching, we went to school together many years ago. And we, unfortunately, we fell out of contact for a long, long time. And so getting a chance to come back and chat with you and catch up with you is really, really amazing. And I love seeing you here. And I'm really grateful for you doing this.
Oh, do you know what? It's just lovely to see you. Like you said, when you reached out about doing this podcast, I was more excited about catching up with you, equally excited to be on this brilliant podcast. But no, we go way back, and we both were creative people at a school that had a farm on it. To put into context, it wasn't a private school; it was a grammar school, but it did have a farm, and I think we shared that unique bond that we had an interest in something that school didn't. In fairness, it was great. It was a good journey we had.
It was, yeah. I really remember A-level theatre studies with you and the gang with fondness. In fact, one thing that came to mind this morning when I was thinking about this recording was a particularly hair-raising car journey to go and watch one performance somewhere in deepest, darkest Oxfordshire.
That I can totally believe. In those days, I have a lot of regrets, and my driving back then is definitely one of them. But there was only, I think there was a handful of us that did that studied theatre, and we were the first ever group, I think, to do the theatre A level. But it was great because it was just this small group of us, and we did some fun things. I remember it was probably one of the first things narratively I ever shot with other people was when we did a thing called Burford Man, which was a superhero spoof we shot around the Cotswold village of Burford. So yeah, it's part of my origin story. So you'll always be a part of my origin story, and for that I am very grateful.
Oh, likewise, sir. I had entirely forgotten about Burford Man.
Probably a good thing. Luckily, I don't have it on tape, so I just have a vision. I'm thinking very Christopher Nolan. I'm sure it was amazing. But yeah, it was great. It was really great.
All I remember with that was two things. One, having to run around this little sleepy Cotswold village in tights.
You did.
And two, that our villain, instead of being called the Penguin, was called the Kit Kat.
It was the Kit Kat. It was another great friend of ours who also was in our group, and she went full in. She fully committed to the role. I don't know who did the costume. I wish I could remember more. Someone somewhere must have that on tape somewhere. It must exist. We'll have to find it.
That scares the crap out of me that exists on tape somewhere.
It was. I'm sure it was terrible. But hey,
for those listening, rather, I should say, that don't know you, that didn't film a Christopher Nolan-esque short Batman spoof back in whenever it was. If we were meeting in person today to record this, where would you suggest we meet, and what would you order to drink?
Wow. I mean, I'm a coffee drinker, so that's easy. I don't drink alcohol, so my friends find it hilarious that when we go out for meals, everyone orders a normal drink. I still order coffee. I'll order coffee with my meal. Where would we meet? I would invite you over here. I would invite you to my house, and I would make you a coffee or whatever you would like to drink. And we'd sit somewhere. We'd sit in this room, which is my favorite room in the house, which is it's where I have all my junk, which you can't see. And we just have a nice chat. If you forced me, we'd go to, uh, can I name the place? I mean, is it promotional? There's a place called Quince, which is in one of the villages near here, and it's the most beautiful, quiet, small coffee shop that do great cakes, great coffee, and I love it there. So I would take you there. I want to share it with you because I think then you'd fall in love with it as well.
Oh, well, I love that. Be it either there with you in your room or at Quince, and I'll raise you a metaphorical coffee.
Fantastic.
Mine will be, depending on the time of day, a decaf with oat milk.
Okay.
But a nice strong blend would be great, nice strong roast. You mentioned about, quote, junk around the desk. I'm also asking guests this season if there's something that is they want to share that sort of gives a glimpse into either them or how they work, or just describe it. That would be great.
I mean, there is so much junk. And I say junk, it's creative stuff. I just keep everything. What would I share that was really meaningful to me? I mean, to be honest, the most important thing to me here is I will grab it. It's a watch. And this watch was my grandfather's, who on my mum's side, who unfortunately passed away not that long ago, a couple of years, maybe a year ago. And he was not like me. He was the quintessential kind, inquisitive, just interested human that I'd had him sort of in my life. And that's without dismissing other brilliant people I've had in my life. But he was a real he was just the person I knew was always interested in me. And I think I actually have a lot of things. He I say he wasn't creative like me, but he would like have a hobby and he would carve things. And so I've got like carved owls. I've got, he was in World War II. He was a Halifax bomber. He was, part of one of Winston Churchill's secret operations, and then was shot down over Germany. And he's sort of one of those fantastic people. And I, on a very regular basis, think of him and think of how he would just be interested in the things I'm doing and his interest in other people. So I think, yeah, the watch is really important. And kind of, it's a bit of I want to say like a guiding light, I suppose, subconsciously of probably the sort of man I would really like to other people to think of me in the future. So yeah, not a huge part of my creative process, but I guess as I am my creative process, it's an important part of me and who I would like to be, I think.
That's really lovely. Thank you for sharing that. There's
No,
a there's a strong. Funnily enough, this has happened. Like we're recording season 3 right now, and all of the seasons that have happened so far, quite by accident, each one has had a recurring theme that I've not pushed in any way, shape, or form, but has just come naturally from the guests. And for 3, it's very much about sort of ancestral connections and heritage, and from the past coming into their lives, and also what guests are hoping for into future generations as well. That sort of theme of connectivity. So to have those objects there that give you that sort of emotional connection to your grandfather and what he meant for you and how he's influenced your life, is really wonderful. And I would love to know, like, what do you feel in terms of what might be the objects that your son and future generations look at of yours and remember you fondly with?
it's a really interesting question, and I do think about it a lot because I think I always think there's a sort of a flip flop nature of parent to child to parent. In that, I think you look at the things when you were being brought up that you liked or didn't like, and then you either pushed back against it in a way almost the opposite if it was something that maybe you weren't sure of, and take things the other way. So I think the interesting thing with my son is I'm quite reserved with like how much I talk about my sort of creative output. I think I grew up in a house with a father who was it was a artist, graphic designer, very exciting, very passionate about his job, very keen to share it with me, and definitely inspired me and all these things. But in a weird way, it's meant I'm almost the opposite, because it had such an influence on me. I always then now as an adult go, well, how much of that influence pushed me down a path before I chose my path, and I kind of don't want to put that burden of making Seb almost idolize the world I'm in a way that stopped him from figuring out what he really wanted to do. So I suppose for me, the things I'd want him to look back on would be like the home videos, the things we've done, the things, the sort of the fun we've had, and and then as probably all fathers or parents would say, I just he will be. I want him to be the thing I've left behind. He's the object more than there being a thing of me. I think I want him to feel like I'm he is by extension of me, not only genetically, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if he'd have any of my objects. It's a really interesting question, because it's almost one I'd want to ask him,
Right.
because I'd almost want those to be things he's decided are meaningful to him, not things that I've decided should be meaningful for him, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I remember when one of my grandmas died, we'd had the wake, and my father then said, and I was maybe 10 or 11, I was reasonably young. And my father said to me, like, if there's anything that you would like from her house as a memento, like, you can choose. And there was a painting that she had. It was this sort of Chinese style artwork, sort of brush painting of a horse. And it didn't go with anything else in her house at all. But I remember every time I visited her, I was always really struck by that painting. I think because it stuck out like a sore thumb. It was not fine art in it by any way, shape, or form. And in fact, that was what I chose. And when I took it home, I realized on the back that there was a very, very old Boots label, and she must have bought it from Boots at some point.
Wow, that's
and I mean, and I've still got that somewhere in storage, that painting, and it's really not about, like you say, it's really not about the object. It's about the memories that the object and the feelings that the object, the emotions the object brings up.
Absolutely.
Which, cheesy segue alert.
Oh, here we go.
With all of the work that you're doing in producing these shows that are loved by millions, is that do you feel a pressure in that people, because we do attach ourselves to programs, movies, songs in a really emotional way? Do you feel that pressure in the moment, or is that something that sort of comes afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. It's been different. I think it's different within the different roles I've done. I think, where I sit now in commissioning, it's sort of the natural evolution of having spent, 20 plus years, a lot of the time creating the idea, taking it through development, the whole process of getting it made, putting it out into the world. That to me, that process, a lot of the time, I always very much was doing that for me, or as in I wasn't necessarily massively thinking about and probably wrongfully. I wasn't designing it or aiming to make an audience at that stage happy. It was something I just had to do. I really wanted to do it. There were definitely times where there'd be projects where either the initial spark didn't come from something I purposefully wanted to do, and so that creative journey was trying to sort of help a talent or help hit some kind of brief in some way, and maybe in those times you feel a pressure to fulfill the brief, and that brief might be it's this comedian's very first show, and they want it to have these criteria, and the channel have very specific expectations, and then of course with everything you want people to like it. I think during that journey you learn that you have very little control over whether someone's going to like it, and actually chasing that specific goal is really tricky. I think as a commissioner, I have a greater awareness of who are the audiences that already come and watch our content. And so very much it's in my head, like I'm making or commissioning stuff to make this audience happy, to retain them, to keep them watching, but also for new audiences who maybe don't come to the network to come over and enjoy it. So there's a greater level there of and obviously the metric now is, did that audience watch it? Because if they didn't, it probably isn't likely to go on and do more. The initial spark though, and I'm just trying to be really honest, is still very selfish. Like I think when I'm in a pitch meeting, I very much have a sort of an instinctive excitement just on a personal level, and those are the things that I do then play with. Is that just me that loves this, or do I think that our audiences will love it too? And I think I then try and figure out, how do I retain the bit that I really want to do and I really think's great in this particular idea, and how do I bridge that gap? Like, how do I make sure that it will also appeal to an audience? And sometimes an idea won't happen because, the people in the business that are probably closer to audience data and all that will push back and say, it's a great idea, Mark, but we don't think our audiences are going to like it. And that can be frustrating. But yeah, I think the pressure changes depending on the metric in which you are being judged to a certain extent. I think I've never thought about awards. I've never thought about sort of any of the accolades. But on a personal level, it just doesn't do anything for me. But I'd be lying if I didn't say obviously I love it when I know people love the stuff we make. But there are definitely things I've made and produced that didn't have success that I still to this day feel are the greatest things I made. And I almost don't, horrible to say, but I almost don't mind that an audience didn't find it or didn't like it, because I'm just so grateful to have brought it into existence, to have been part of that process and enjoyed that process. And so, yeah, a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but I think I kind of got there in the end, maybe.
Yeah, no, 100%. And okay. It resonates because there's two things that I want to sort of dive into on that, because that, you said about being honest, that there is a selfish aspect of finding the thing in the brief that you really love, and then you can sort of focus on that and make sure that bit's included. I think A, that's completely human, and B, that's a really good, I can't think of another word that's better at the moment. I'm going to say survival tactic, but with a lowercase s, because you're hooking onto the thing that engages you. So there's a piece of it that you're really proud of or protective of. And so you're going to push through and make sure this happens, as opposed to a project where you approach it going, like you're going to have less impetus because there isn't a hook there for you. There isn't something to kind of go, yeah, I love this as a whole. That bit I really, really love. And I really want to see that come to fruition. Which makes me wonder, what's your advice to someone, and this could be in any creative discipline, where they're facing a brief that they're not fully excited by? What would be your sort of advice as to how to handle that?
It's really, I mean, everyone's different, right? I mean, I don't know, I'm fascinated by other people's creative processes, and I absolutely spend 90% of my free time just in anything creative, whether it be from comic books to music and art. I think I'm still fascinated and find it amazing the breadth of creativity that people like can pull out of thin air. I mean, it's like a big magic trick. It's always been the most exciting thing. I think my instinct is always to sort of, there are definitely things where you're gonna just not be able to find something you love about it. My tactic has always been, and I obviously, it's not an isolated job what I do. It's hugely collaborative. There's a lot of people. I obviously have great faith in my own process, and I know what my capabilities are, and I know what I will do with an idea. And because of that, if I don't think I can do that, my instinct is always to find the smartest person in the room. And what I mean is, if I'm in a room, I will try and find the person that absolutely has that passion, the author, the voice, like who's going to be the voice of this thing. And if it isn't going to be me, I'm absolutely fine with that, as long as I think there's someone else that I can sense they've got that thing I can't find. And then I find that really attractive. Like I find that kind of exciting in a different way. And I have a colleague I work with, Jason, I'm not going to say his surname, but he's someone I've known for a long time. And I just have this deep respect for his creative choices and the way he's passionate. And we don't always have the same things we're passionate about, but him being passionate about something I put that absolutely equal with whether I find it interesting, because I get it. I get seeing how other people, when they commit to something, that's immediately, and there's something in it that they can take ownership of. They feel they have clarity of vision. I feel like that's always the secret sauce. And whether you agree with it, whether you like the end product, whether you would have done the same thing yourself, is almost doesn't matter. You just can see that someone is going to care about this thing and find it creatively exciting. I mean, if you don't have that, then sometimes you walk away and, or you're very honest and say, I'm just not the guy for this. I've been asked to produce shows that I've said, I mean, I need the money. I need the job, but I know I won't enjoy doing this, and I won't be the best person. Like I won't be that person in the room that really wants to do this. And I had a football show, and I just have no interest in football, and I just found it really hard to navigate what I could find in that show, because sometimes there'll be an element, it might be there's something in it that you kind of realign where you're going to be great. Sometimes it can be just a singular element that you can latch onto that does it, but sometimes you just go, it doesn't meet with my values, or I don't have the right skill set, or life's too short. And I think I appreciate that it's a luxurious position to be able to say I don't want to do that, but vice versa, sometimes you just got to. There's nothing more painful, and I have lived experience of being of doing something I found nothing in it for me, and it was the lowest point in my career, and I didn't do a good job, and so actually I would have been better off not doing it.
Mm. There are so many stories of people across the creative industries where they take a job on that they know in their gut is, this I'm not going to enjoy this. I'm not going to do the best work of my life ever on this. And then they get a week or two in, and they're at that place where they wish they hadn't taken it, and then they get an offer for something would have been maybe not a dream project, but way better, and they can't do it because they've already committed to that other thing. So I think
Yeah.
there's something to it. You're right. Like there is, we all have bills to pay, and we all have sort of financial responsibilities, and so you have to be mindful of that. But there is also, there's a reason we have gut instincts. There's a reason why those for humans have been honed for millions of years as a survival tactic.
Yeah.
And the less we listen, like every shit moment in my life, I just feel sure I had a gut feeling that I shouldn't do the thing that I
Mm,
then went on to do, and I just ignored it. Um, and
absolutely.
it takes a long time to listen to that. I also love what you said about your colleague, and for me that resonated as having sort of built up an innate trust in each other to know, yeah, like we're on the same wavelength here, or even if we're not, I know that he or she will do a great thing. I have a long time client, David Tyler from Positive Television, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And he and I have a really great mutual respect. I know he knows what's funny, and he knows I know what makes a good design, right? And so
Right.
he is one of a handful of clients in 30 years of doing this that I will allow them to say, I'll know it when I see it,
Yeah.
because I know for him that's part of his process. And what will happen is, um, it allows him the freedom and the flexibility to sort of go on a live thinking process, to then come to the feedback that guides me to the right place to make something a good design, but also really funny. And so when you find those sort of uber collaborators, it just results in magic, I think.
I mean, it's relationships just across the board. I mean, like stepping even further back, when you think about the sort of people you end up having around you, and you really think about why those people, and what qualities in them have you been attracted to, and sometimes those people are sharing very similar worldviews, whether that be morals or other things, and then other times it's that they fill a gap that you have, even if you've never thought about it. They, for example, I have ADHD, and I'm very, I'm very disorganized, and it's no surprise to me that my partner and I've been together for a long time. As Adam knows, I mean, I met my partner when I was 13, so that's how long I've been with my partner. But she is the antithesis of that. Extremely organized, extremely, there's a sort of attraction I think we have around people that we respect, that they can do something we can't. And so I think it's that plethora of people, and in a creative space where you have a partnership or someone, you don't want to work with someone that does exactly what you do, because you kind of both want to be prodding and pushing each other into these spaces to get to the best place. But that innate trust that you've either experienced, like for me with Jason, we'd worked together maybe 10 years ago, and he was really junior, and I brought him into a show where we had to book stand-up comics for a certain segment of the show every week. And his job was to go out, he'd go and see gigs constantly around London, around wherever, and then sort of come back to me and say, I think this person's got a great 20 minutes, this person's ready, this person isn't ready. And at that point he might say, right, why don't you come along and see these three? I think they're going to be great. And I'd go along. I'd started to realize he was making great choices. Like he was, and I remember there was a day, down the line where I sort of managed to sum up exactly what it was that then I think set in motion our working relationship, which was, I said, I don't need to worry about that slot, because I know Jason is worrying more than me about it. Right. And I would feel that, like I knew I didn't need to be as kind of passionate and granular and have all that creative authorship and commitment to it, because I had absolute faith that he had that and more so. And I was attracted to that. You're attracted to that thing that you see, even if it's not exactly like you just sense that thought process, that care, that commitment, that passion is there. And that's, if that could be for something that you have no interest in, but you spot it and you go, God, I really want that person. I need that person. Like, together, they're going to see that in me. And if we see it in each other, a shorthand over time occurs where you can be in meetings with clients or with producers, and you're disagreeing in the meeting with respect with each other. You're not like sat there as some company hierarchy listening to someone asking if you'll give them money. You're having a process, a real interesting collaborative back and forward where you're building on each other. You're siding with the producer, but with full respect, because you know that no matter how much you care about getting this right, that person cares more. And if you believe that, then that's you almost feel indestructible. And I really recommend, if you find one of those people, that you do everything you can to nurture that relationship, because they will make you better. They will help you in those lull moments of self-doubt. You will pick each other up. You will drive each other high. You'll celebrate each other's success. I mean, it's a marriage, right? You're gonna, I think it's great to do these things alone, but I would hazard to guess that most creatives that people think do it on their own will have people that are exactly that. And I'm surrounded by them. I'm the sum of so many brilliant colleagues, and through so many different departments, and above me too. You are only as good as, no matter how much your ego says that you're special. You are so the sum of so many parts, and the big part of being creative is being open to spotting where all these great people are and where they can help, and where you can help them is equally important. And then it's just fun. Then it stops being just a job. It becomes this like nurturing, giving birth to these things that you're sharing. You're raising this creative child together, and then you all get to the end of it and you're all proud of it. And of course, we all have individual things, and that's important. I have my music, I write my songs, and that's very much me. And I'm very happy with that for myself. But these collaborative processes, and this goes back to when we were at school, Adam. Well, I can literally go right back to when we used to do the school drama. And it was like this big deal. You'd like, one year it'd be a musical, I think, and then the next year it might be a play, and you'd have to audition to try and get on it. And I'd never get the lead because I couldn't sing and all this stuff. But once you were in that gang of people that were doing rehearsals and hanging out, and we were all different ages, and we all wouldn't normally hang out, but we would in this thing. I mean, I still to this day I was so happy just hanging out with a sixth former while I was in the second year, and we would be this creative bunch of people with this shared passion, all bringing something different to the table. But it was great. Wow, that was I had this real memory of the pajama game.
Yeah,
and all the people in it, and I wasn't even a major role. I think I was like a waiter, but I was in that gang, and it was a creative bunch of people that all wanted to do this thing, and it was just a school thing. But I put it on a par with Russell Howard's Good News. I put it up there with some of these shows I've done that are successful, because the same effort, the same time, the same care. It's just a different platform, but it's super exciting.
I love that. And that, yes, I remember Pajama Game, and that then makes me think of gargling with jelly, and like
gargling with jelly. I don't know if you remember this. I vividly do because I remember writing it, but I also remember being the person that forgot his lines, which was a play I wrote about my family. And I think it was called like My Life, Their Lives. And you were the dad. And I think some of our other guys, it was probably when we were in sixth form, and I wrote it, and it was sort of like autobiographical. I mean, so ego, and it had like breaking the fourth wall with this stage in the audience. And I remember inviting all my family to come and see it. But I only
I
remembered that
remember.
recently. It
Yeah,
was,
I remember.
but we did all sorts of stuff. And again, I link so much of the absolute joy and discovery I had then of this, the sort of, you take a thought, you know, you build it, you share it, you work with all these people, and then you give birth to it. I think I've been chasing that joy for my whole career, just trying to monetize it, just trying to become a grown up with that same feeling of, you know, caring about something so much and feeling so proud of something. That feeling is like, that's the golden egg, or the golden goose. I'll take either.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I love it. There's so much I want to unpack from that answer, but before I do, what's coming up for me, and this is a very self-reminiscent episode, I'm aware, but it may trigger other fond memories for those listening or watching. But I can remember a play that you wrote called The 13th Hour,
Oh my
where
God.
I was this sort of mystical Fisher King type character,
Yeah,
and I had to hide under the stage
you
whilst the
did.
audience was coming in for about half an hour, and then almost choked to death on the smoke
This.
machine he had
Yeah,
that was under stage with me
yeah.
to create atmosphere.
I wanted it all. That will peak. What a peak moment of my. That is the peak moment of my origin story, because that was really where so many things intersected. So my memories of it, obviously, I remember this was during our theatre A level, so I remember writing this thing, and I was very inspired at the time by there was a film called Jacob's Ladder with was very deep, and at the time for me, directed by Adrian Nine, and it was about a guy who's, I don't, no spoilers, but it was a fantastic film. And I'd also been to see the film Seven. And I think at that stage, I was genuinely beginning to realize I wanted to do film. Like, I wanted to be Spielberg. I wanted to do that. I mean, I'd known I wanted to I went to film school first time when I was 13, I think. I went to the Four Corners workshop in Bethnal Green and learned film work. But, obviously at our school, there was no video course or anything. So, but I think it was the first time I was like, I want to make a cinematic thing. Like, essentially, I want to do this thing that I wish we were filming it, but I'm going to do it on stage. So I wanted all that cinematic stuff. So I wrote the theme tune, and my dad played like the electric guitar solo on it. I wrote this script, and I just had, I built the set out of balsa wood, for the course. And I think it was like that first proper obsessive thing where I really wanted all these things that I guessed, then I went on to film school afterwards and did more of that stuff. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It was funny, but yeah, I can't help but be impressed by all of us. Like we did do it. We pulled that thing off. I mean, it was a very ambitious thing to try and do at school. I'm kind of proud of myself for bothering. Like, I remember the house music competition, no, the house theatre competition or drama. And a girl in our year, Chloe, coming up to me and saying, could you write? We're going to do this, but we're now not going to do it because someone else is doing exactly the same thing. Could you write us a play for like the house drama competition? I remember going to the library on my own and just wrote this play called, and even in that play, I did things like I put some of the actors, I put them in the audience so that they would like seemingly get up and shout, but they were actually part of the play. I had a bunch of students come marching in and block all the doors of the theatre. And it was all under this idea that it was promoting a drug called Matulin, the male wonder drug, that they were actually secretly trying to destroy men. Very topical. I was way ahead of toxic masculinity. And I remember just doing this thing, had a dance routine, had all this stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think all these things were just getting that first experience of just flex and output becoming real, not just becoming notebook thoughts, not becoming insecure hopes that maybe this thing I'm writing, this song I'm writing, this poem I'm writing is really for anything. Not that I now feel like it doesn't actually. There's something hugely liberating about doing it for absolutely no other reason than the doing. I do that a lot more now than I did then. But it was that, I think you have those experiences where you sit back a moment and you go, well, there it is. That thing that I imagined has happened. And I also had my first taste of validation, which I'd never, apart from my dad and from my family, I think I was quite, and I say this, my memory of it is I never got a lot of positive reinforcement from my peers because I think I was quite arrogant in my behavior. Like, I think I came across as so self-confident, so all these things. I think people don't tend to want to celebrate you when you behave like that. And I get that. I totally do. I have my reasons. Like, underneath all that, I was actually the opposite, but I definitely gave off this idea that yes, I am going to be this great filmmaker. Yes, I am going to do all this stuff. So I wasn't getting a lot of validation, and I don't think I thought validation from my brilliant theatre teachers was enough. I think again, some of that ego, I didn't think they weren't Spielberg, so why did I care what they thought, which is very disrespectful, but again, you're young. But in that audience of that house drama competition was I think he was a producer or director who lived in the village, and afterwards, my mum and dad got a phone call from him saying, would I go round to meet him? And I didn't know who he was or what he wanted. So I went round to their house and he sort of sat me down. He'd said, his daughter was in the play apparently. And he just told me how great it was and that I should think about going to the Bristol Old Vic or something like that, which at that time I went, I don't want to go to Bristol, so I'm not going to go to the Bristol Old Vic. But it was just this adult that wasn't family going, that was really impressive. And I'd not really heard that or felt that or allowed that to make me think, oh, wow, okay, so maybe this sort of like bravado, maybe I have got something. But I think, in hindsight, it gave me permission to continue that sort of self-belief, which now I look back and go, it was crucial, that self-belief, because I think at so many stages, it would have been so much easier to have done something else. But I'm glad I didn't.
Likewise. I'm pleased for you that you didn't, and I'm pleased for you. And just for the record, I don't think I ever thought of you as an ego. I think I just thought that you were really driven and that you were going to do it. I felt sure that you were going to do this.
I think that's really kind. I mean, I'm sure, I think, we all know the super confident kids when we were kids. We know the sports star, the cool kids, the bullies, the things like that. I think, when you're trying to find your place, I think, all these archetypes are masking something. We all know that as we become adults, but I think when we're kids, we're sort of putting something. I think I very quickly realized I wasn't going to be the sports star. I wasn't going to be the best looking guy. I wasn't going to be the bully. Not interested. So what am I? But I want to be a thing. I kind of knew that I felt a bit of an outsider, like I couldn't really integrate into big groups. Wasn't very good at that. I wanted to be a leader, but no one was going to give me that archetype. So I think I had to carve out my own archetype so I could be a leader for myself, for my own self-esteem, all those things. And I carved out, my writing, my music. I even carved out basketball, which I chose in some ways because no one else played it. So in a way, I could be really good at that because I didn't have to compete with everyone else. And I think it was all like a bit of a mechanism I was creating to keep the belief that, there was a sort of deeper sense that I wanted to not compete against people in school, but the rest of the world. I had this constant thing. It was something my dad had said to me when I once came home with, and this isn't a good, in hindsight, this isn't a great story of parenting, but I remember coming home and saying to him, I came top of the class in English. And he said, great. What did you get? And I was like, I got 67%. He went, 67%? That's not great. I said, I came top of the class. He went, you're not against the class, you're against the whole world. 67% isn't enough. And I think that just stuck in my head that like I was blinkering this. I'm just competing against these people here. He was saying to me, forget about this. This is just going to be nothing. You want to be thinking, what's that kid that whose job you want? I mean, how the hell at that age do you really take that in? But the fact I remember it so vividly, it must have stuck as a sort of, right. So my gauge of what do I feel like I need to be needs to be bigger than this. It needs to be bigger. And I think the offset of that, unfortunately, again, naivety, lack of experience, was I diminished the sense of, that school. There were certain people, I mean, I've stayed in touch with yourself. There's a couple more people, my very close friend, but I think it's very telling that I didn't nurture or keep any other friendships from school. And I think that's because subconsciously I wanted to get beyond it. I wanted to be more than it. I had to believe that that the school wasn't big enough for me in order to just somehow motivate me to keep going up and up and up and up, because I didn't really know how to go up and up and up. I had no idea how to go up and up. So something needed to I needed to back myself into that corner. And I did the same when I went to film school. I sort of went to film school with the mindset that I'd told so many people that I'm better than the school, that it's because the school didn't have the things I needed that I'm going to be this thing, that I hit film school with this sense that I've got to prove to everyone that I'm the best at this school. Like there is no, I'm just going to go there and be okay. My only goal is to be the best. Again, it's meaningless, but just that mentality to motivate and drive myself to really do more. And I think that was the beginning of just how I've always kept pushing, even through, maybe not even wanting to do some of these things, but there was a sort of drive that was put in there somewhere really early on. And I'm under no illusion, I'm a commissioning exec at UKTV. I'm not Steven Spielberg. I'm not the head of Netflix. I'm not really talking about those sort of, I've achieved something amazing, but I think the momentum and the sort of consistent, I mean, I haven't stopped doing what I do now since I was at school. Like I never took a year traveling. I moved to Canada, but I worked there, and it's helped me keep some kind of career path for what I love doing, which is ideas. I mean, that's all I actually think. Essentially, I have a lot of noise, a lot of quick thoughts going all the time, and it gives me somewhere to put it that manifests in something tangible, instead of being a madman sat in my lounge scribbling in notebooks
and all over the walls.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned in there about, those sort of school archetypes, and that when you become older, you realize they're all masking something. They're all masking some insecurity or trauma or whatever it may be, but misheld beliefs or narratives that they've been fed from their upbringing that aren't quite true, or don't have to be true. And for me, I wore that mask of the clown, right? From school, all the way through to adulthood, I was the one that would make people laugh. I was the one that would, I was the sidekick comedy character. I was never the kind of lead hero guy. And I was fine with that. I knew that's not what I look like. My jaw is not square and chiseled. I'm not going to be that guy. Um, and the drug, the hit of getting an audience to laugh, or even just getting one person to laugh at something you said, was so powerful, that I pursued that and pursued that and pursued that. And it's only been more recently, as an adult working through issues, that I've realized what that was I wasn't really looking for someone to laugh at the joke. I was looking for someone to see me and recognize me and give me some form of validation.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be that what I found I was good at was making people laugh. That made me feel good. Then I felt like I was being validated. And so, it's interesting now through the leadership positions that I've had, like you touched on earlier on, in our conversation, where you said you go into a room and you start to see people now and you go, yeah, I think I know where you are in your journey. I think I know what's going on over here for you. I get where you've been, and you become much more open to seeing humans as humans.
Mm.
And so I would love to know, like, as you work with a great number of people from sort of project to project, like, where do you feel is the line for you to sort of be, what am I trying to say here? Like, if you notice someone who is wearing a mask or what have you, like, where do you feel the line as a sort of shepherd of that project is appropriate for you to do something with that knowledge or with that foresight?
It's a really, really good question. Before I answer it, though, I want to go back because my recollections, because this is nice, right? My recollections of you at school, there was definitely an element of you that was, you were very funny, very charismatic. You were very good with people. What I vividly remember was you just seemed so much further ahead than us in maturity from like the beginning. And I remember like when you were head boy and you were doing a lot of drama stuff, you were definitely already ahead of me in my head, like doing stuff, voiceover work. You were very charismatic and you were very much wanting to be a leader. And so I actually think, I don't know if everyone would, if you asked people back at school, if they thought they remembered you as the clown. I think you had a light touch to the way you were, but that was part of your bigger personality, which was you were just a bit more grown up than us. I think I know I'm not going to share stuff, but I know you've been through more than most kids do, and experiencing that, I think, forces you into taking on a bit more of a grown up role emotionally. And I remember being very that made push me into a very adult place as you went through that, because I made a choice to talk to you about it, which as a kid is quite like, do you just see a guy out a window and let them walk by knowing that you want to say something? And I decided in that moment, I'm going to go outside and say something. And I remember, I don't want to make that about me, but it's just interesting, the moments we have where adulthood and maturity and all these things kind of collide, and you realize that you are maybe more grown up than you think you are. But no, my memory of you is, I think it's really not surprising that you're doing this. I think you were very thoughtful. You were you're a nice guy. Like I never had a moment where you weren't a kind, nice person. It was inherent in your nature. And it feels like you've come full circle, which I think that's what I'm realizing with my own journey, is that sense of coming full circle a bit to actually just becoming a more outward version of the internal person we were all the time. So sorry, I know that wasn't answering the question, but I thought your listeners don't need to think you're a clown. that's really the take out here. You are more than a clown, Adam.
Thank you. Do you know what? I genuinely, that touches me, and I really appreciate that deeply, because as little as 12 months ago, you would have said that, and I would have responded with a joke. because,
Right.
you know, but now I want to hear from people, not to feed an ego, although I'm sure
Mm.
there is on some level some of that, because
Yeah.
who doesn't want to hear a compliment about themselves? But also because you're right, it is about finding that. It's not necessarily finding the inner child, but it's finding all of those inner pieces of you, all of those different ages that got lost at one point along the way, and pulling them all together to be you, to be like authentically you. And a lot of what I do in helping others to lead their teams is exactly that. Is to, not that I'm a therapist or anything like that. That's not what I mean, but is to look at everybody as a human like you. We all have goals and dreams and challenges that are the same or similar to everybody else. And the second you realize that, from someone reporting to you, to the boss that you're reporting to your client, to your client's boss, we're all human. We all have good days. We all have shit days. And just to factor that into how you go through life on a day-to-day basis, it takes an incredible amount to be and stay open to that, because that might mean you're being in the face of someone shouting at you. It might mean you're being in the face of someone slamming the phone down on you. It might mean you're in the face of a no when you really wanted a yes. But what's behind that person shouting? What's behind that person slamming the phone down? What's behind the no? It's probably nothing to do with you,
100%.
and it's probably nothing to do with them in that moment, in that day.
100%.
And so I really appreciate that. Thank you a lot. It means a lot.
It brings us full. I think that helps me with your question, which is like, where's the line? With people, I mean, it's slightly tangential, but when I sort of went through some therapy around sort of my ADHD and autism, what I realized was that one of the problems I'd had was sort of having to just pay that little bit more attention to people and sort of kind of trying to understand, a lot of these things that, we can intellectualize around, what's really going on in their life and what's on the face of it, but just trying to decode some of that social behavior because it was causing me a lot of anxiety. And so I think I'd realized that, I had been paying attention to that sort of deeper, like what are people want, what are their goals in this moment, like what are they trying to get out of this moment, and and I would try and understand that. And I think the mistake I'd made previously was I wanted to be that answer, so I would be using this information to leverage getting kind of what they want. I can be that, and be, brutally trying to orchestrate getting what I want out of being able to manipulate that, like not in a Machiavellian way, but I think just trying to understand, I've got a thing I want to achieve. I've got this idea, I've got this thing I'm passionate about, and I want you to feel as passionate as I do about it. I can either hit you around the head with just how much I like it, no matter what you say, or I'm trying to understand, well, what can I say that will make you end up liking it as much as I do? And how do I orchestrate, that situation? And I think with all of that sort of like skill set just over the years, I do find myself sort of trying to figure out the sort of psychological makeup of the people around me and the people I'm working with. And, that doesn't even need to delve into anything that personal. Some of it just feels almost like there are just certain things you spot or can pick up on, and triggers, and why people, some people really, if you disagree with them in a certain way, they double down. We all know that. We work with people where they say, oh, I don't really like that. And you say, you're wrong. You bang, you've done it. You've blown it. Because now that switched them into a new mode where if they're wrong, they need to prove you right. So you're screwed. So I think I do, for want of a better word, I do think it's something I'm very conscious and subconsciously aware of in a room. And I think I try and use that to my advantage, and I try and display that too. I think one of the ways to help break down those barriers is for me to be hugely transparent about, I'm willing to change my mind. I've always decided that a lot of creative people, they feel like then their currency is that they're right creatively. I've got an idea. I want it to look this way. I want it to be this way. And my experience says I'm right. So, and I think if you can show that you can switch on a dime because you spot when someone else has got a better idea, that you're open to that. You're open to, this is the thing I love, but you've said something, I love that more. Okay. And actually you also learn that by being the person that, because you walked into a room and you say, I'm a creative person and here's my idea. You've told them what to think of you. You're a creative person with an idea. So that's your status there in their head. In that moment, if they say something and then you say, that's an amazing idea, I love it. The fact that you said that, no, the creative person with the idea has told you, the person they've come in to talk, that your idea might be better than theirs. You're starting to change the conversation. It's now like, oh, that feels good. Oh, okay. And I think then it's a game of just making sure that, my goal is I want to make this. I want other people to love this thing. Their goal might be, I haven't got enough money. I want to say no. Their goal might be something else. But on a very human level, the best place to get to as soon as you can is where they share, you've infected them with something about your love, your passion, your idea, and they're starting to see it and feel it themselves. And then my job is to share it, to be unselfish, to give some of it away, to concede, but keeping that goal that I need to walk out of this with the thing I wanted in the first place, even if the picture now looks like it's no longer my idea, it's our idea, or maybe it's their idea. I have to decide what's most important, me winning, ego winning, or winning. And I think that that's become the biggest sort of career thing, is like defining what is the win situation here. And do I care what that looks like? Like, do I care that my name's at the top of it anymore? Do I care that people even think it's mine anymore? Or am I really satisfied that the thing that I really wanted is happening? And that's kind of where I've got to on my journey. So I don't know if that fully answers the idea in a room where the line is and what it is, but I think it touches on how I sort of approach creative conversation. Obviously it has to be adapted, but there are definitely still synergies depending on who I'm in the room with and what I can sense they need. And that taps into my kind of codependency background with my dad, wanting to make him happy, and making people happy means I'm sort of instinctively trying to do that. And by proxy, I'm processing quickly. What can I do here to curry positivity and favor so that my goals and my sort of ambitions can be fulfilled? It's can sound quite manipulative. So I have to be so careful, because it's certainly not what's going on in the moment. But I think just deconstructing it, it's a skill. It's like a personality skill mixed with, I think, just an inquisitiveness. And I know it all filters down to why I do what I do and why I find ideas and sort of creative things so interesting, is that I feel like I'm processing so many just kind of bits from all over the place and kind of try and do something with it. And maybe I've just attained skills in which to take these thoughts and turn them into something. And that's kind of been a good use of that rubbish that I couldn't really do anything else with.
I think that I know what you mean about, wanting to describe it correctly, because it isn't manipulative. But if you the wrong phraseology could push it in some people's perspective into that. But I think the key thing you said was, what do I want to win? Do I want the ego to win, or do I want to win? And I think that's the key, right? Like, because that secondary win could be a you win, but it's more likely to be an us win, right? How do I make this project win? And if the project wins, then it's not just me and my teammates and my boss and my organization, but it's also the end consumer. They get a great product, be that a show or a digital app or like whatever it might be, right? And so I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of the authenticity of that strive and the sort of correct ethical, moral stance around why that is so important. And I wonder, long-time listeners know I'm fully ADHD, and so I appreciate you sharing that as well. And I wonder if there is something about us neurodivergence that enables us to think slightly, well, I mean, clearly there's something that enables us to think differently, but like within respect to sensing the room, sensing the people, connecting those dots in a way to then try and help others. I do wonder if there's something from our difficult childhoods in terms of having that neurodivergency not being recognized back when we were kids at school. It really wasn't that big a thing, and certainly wasn't much support for it. So we were in this world that constantly told us we did things the wrong way, we thought about things the wrong way, we were too loud, we were too quiet, whatever it might be. What's your sort of feeling on that?
Yeah, we've probably not got enough time for me to talk about. I think that, I'm super aware of the conversation around ADHD, and I sometimes feel reticent because it feels like there's a sort of sense of diminishment of what that actually means. Like, where I sit on it is the biggest problem we've created, or society created, was defining the term normal. I mean, none of the rest is a problem. If we didn't have a thing called normal, then we wouldn't need to be ADHD and there wouldn't need to be a spectrum, right? And this is the big issue that people struggle with, is they think you're trying to suggest that you're special or something else, when really what you're trying to say is the rules and the way the world works to kind of make the majority feel comfortable, which totally makes sense. Those rules got called normal, and those rules were somewhere on a spectrum that captured the most amount of people. And of course, there are going to be people all over that spectrum. And nowadays, that's a conversation we can have, which is great, because, the problem with normal being this definition of not just normal, but normal meaning right, like correct. That's led to people that are not normal taking a drug to be normal, which is kind of ludicrous and a bit silly, that people might feel the need. I mean, I say that without any medical training, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm just, my very personal feeling was, I went down the medical route on my ADHD, and it changed me, and that made me uncomfortable, that I was changing myself to fit normal. It did make me more normal. I could focus more. I sat down and I could do singular tasks for a long time, but it made me really question, if I'm not wired to do that, should I be forced? I feel like I'm doing something slightly wrong by going, actually, I get it. I get that the world doesn't adapt to us all, and won't adapt to every single individual. And I'm absolutely fine with that. There's an element of compromise we all should make, but all sorts of situations. And I will make, and do make, tons of compromises around where my personal comfort is, and where the business demands I need to do things a certain way. I don't want to walk on stage and do a big presentation to a room of people, but I will for the job. I'm like, no, that was some work I put in to be able to find myself in that situation. Sure, is it harder for me than maybe someone else? Possibly, but there'll be things like I can sit in a room, someone can throw one idea at me, and it's super easy for me to go, I could see it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. And that would be really hard for someone else. They'd be like, oh, I need more, it needs to be more organized than that. So equally, compromises across the board. So again, I think defining normal, it was the problem. And classically, I've lost, I have completely lost my train of thought. But I think I do like talking about it because really the answer is that wouldn't the world be a better place with just one line and you just end up somewhere on it and you don't need to be labeled, and then therefore you just get on with it, and you'll be good at some things, you'll be bad at other things. Some things will really suit you, some things won't. You won't spend a childhood trying to fit into a round hole when you're a square peg, because you'll already have been realized I'm never going to go in that peg, and the only way I'm going to go in that hole is if I change myself, and I don't want to do that. Just like I didn't grow up as a kid going, I want to be I want to be a chess player, and I'm going to force myself, because I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. I think a lot of it is the friction between it trying to be the thing that you should be allowed not to be, and then realizing that there are all these things are real specialist skills and have a real place, decision making, where you can be playing around with tons of different variants, because it feels like everything is a variant going on in your head. That's like a superpower across loads of disciplines. Imagine if you could harness that and celebrate it from a very young age. Wow, you can think like that. Well, then you could be doing all this stuff, and that's absolutely cool. Not your kid doesn't want to sit down in a classroom and wants to look out of a window and is really good at creative stuff. Therefore, he needs to go and see a doctor. And now he gets given a label, and that label means that he knows he's not the same as everyone else. Therefore, you're psychologically making someone feel less than or outsider, and therefore creating a lot of long-term issues that didn't need to be created. And I'd say a lot of us grown-up adults dealing with this now are looking back going, wow, a lot of my issues for a long time could have just been undone if I just even understood that the way my brain was wired was different. And that's absolutely brilliant. Like, as simple as that would have then led to maybe a lot less misery, thinking there was something wrong with me, or I was less than other people, or I couldn't do it. Like, I'd be going to do a breakfast kids show for BBC Two. I would throw up at the bus stop every single morning from anxiety and fear, all just because I had to socially interact with 8 kids on Skype. I couldn't do my job. I found that social interaction really hard. I just thought I was terrible. I thought I was shit at my job, and I would go there feeling terrible every day, and I would leave feeling terrible. And I think that we could avoid all of that if I had the language to say, I shouldn't really do that. Right? That isn't something I'm ever going to get over. I'm not going to get good at that. Or anyway, sorry, this is what happens.
I think, what you've just shared is an answer so full of love, because, and the bit that really resonates with me is we shouldn't have a normal. We should just have, we are all human.
Right? Even the dog. Even the dog.
I think it is useful to have terminology and therefore an understanding of things. But you're right. Like when something is labeled as different, humans have a tendency to label that as bad. Different is bad. I want baseline. I want, similarities.
Well, by proxy, if there's a normal, anything that's not normal is abnormal. Right. And that's a problem, right? Isn't it? I mean, just by definition, if you're outside of normal, you can be nothing other than abnormal. And unfortunately, that's a negative term, and that immediately sets you on a path, I think, of feeling that there's something wrong. And we all know, if someone tells you that there's at a young age that you're naughty or that you're lazy, those labels, they're subconsciously defining, you're building your framework of the person you're going to be. And I think if you get that wrong, which I think we do, you can, obviously it's some people get over it. There'll be people listening to this going, oh, for God's sake, my kids got this and they're fine. I probably got it, is what I hear a lot. And again, I have so much empathy when someone says to me after I talk about this, they'll go, yeah, but everyone's got a bit of that. I've got a bit of that. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a good thing, right? Like, it's not, I'm not out trying to say I'm special. And we're not, I don't think anyone who wants to talk about this is saying that they're special, or wants special treatment and I think that again just goes to show people's instincts are sort of on the defense a little bit. And yet really, I think all anyone's trying to say is like, step back and look and go, does this make sense to you? Do you know people that are you the same as everyone you know? And have you ever been told that that a difference about you is a negative thing, and yet it's inherent in your DNA, in your psyche, like something you can't really change about yourself? And has that been detrimental on other facets of your life, other things you've done? Did that stop you doing something? I found creativity. I found all these things. I imagine a world where I hadn't found that. And so I'd gone down a more academic route, or pushed myself into a world that I wasn't suited for. And there must be many people that have done that then reflect and go, well, if just someone had spotted that and just let me and celebrated that difference. Like when I think about, I was definitely in trouble. I mean, I had a lesson in economics that for an entire school year, I was sent, before the lesson started, I was sent out. So the teacher would walk in and I'd say, Iddon, outside. Just because I'd taken the mick at some point, or I'd bursted out with a thought or something. I'm not saying I was an angel. I was not, but it had ramifications. And I think, it's as simple as that. People just think about, even if you think you're normal and whatever is in that normal category, just what an effect labeling of any kind can have. And whether you think there's a good reason for it or not, that there's this decent human argument to suggest that, how dare I suggest that it's not too late to, and as we should, to reappraise that, like within current society. I just feel like we'd all be a little bit happier, and I don't think it would break anything. And I don't think it's something for people to be guarded about or defensive about or ashamed of, or it almost should just be a nothingness. I just think we'd have a more functional, exciting, diverse, brilliant society where we'd embraced all these things. And I wonder how many ills we end up with, how many people with issues, how many, crime. I mean, I just wonder what effect that might have on all these things, because part of me instinctively thinks you're going to be pretty angry if you've not figured this stuff out. At some point, the world's going to really piss you off for making you so unhappy. And I wonder if that's useful for any of us, really. Wow, we've got existential. We can change the title of your podcast.
Yeah, we got deep. We are coming up on time, so there's only 2 more questions left.
Right.
And I feel like we've sort of barely scratched the surface, but in a really wonderfully beautiful way. I love where the conversation has gone. What do you want people listening or watching to take away from this episode?
I think they should think what a cool guy that Mark Iddon is. No, I think it's just like these conversations that we're having, and we listen to on podcast. I mean, I listen to every podcast, every interview, everything, and they're great, and they usually have like a focus and everything else. But I think just to take away, just how interesting and complicated, and how beautifully complicated the world is and people are. And I think from a sort of a career, bringing it all back to career, I think all these things lead to a really fulfilling way of you being able to express yourself as close to truth as you can within the thing you're doing, no matter what that is. And I think it just, I would love for, everyone to find that permission to be true to themselves, and then to sort of define and to move forward as much as they can on those terms. Because I think that's sort of the answer to fulfillment is, it's not probably what you think it is, or the thing you've been chasing probably isn't the answer. And I think listening to me waffle on, having gone through this journey and still on the journey, let's be honest, I just think it's good to get into the weeds a bit. I didn't want to come on and be like, this is how you become a TV person. This is what you should do with your career. I mean, obviously, we do that in our jobs all the time, and by all means, people reach out to me all the time. I'm always happy to have a chat, about that stuff. But I quite like just having a very human conversation, a very messy conversation, because I really think that it's in those messy conversations that we find the truth.
100%. And I say that Awaiting Approval is a design podcast about the blah, 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 blah. It's not. It's about humans. It's not really about design. It's just the humans that I talk to come from creative industries, because that's where I've lived my life, But you're right. Those moments where we can just talk and follow whatever path the conversation leads us down is the most human kind of conversation we can have, right?
Yeah.
It's not planned, it's not scripted, it's just where we go with the conversation.
And it's beautiful, like, without sounding stupid and like a typical creative, I think there's a real beauty in the sheer chaos and messiness of what we're all going through. And we are, the world's changing. Like, we talked about this pre-podcast when we were catching up, but like, the world is a complicated, scary, changing, weird thing, and the sand's moving under our feet. And a lot of the things we just rigidly hung on to as the way things are, the way our careers go, the way our education goes, the way things just should be. And we hold on to those like some kind of life buoy in a rough sea, is no longer really the trustworthy source. And that feels terrifying. You talk to your parents for advice, for example. Already now it feels like a different planet of what happened in their life. They bought houses, they did, there's things that just aren't options anymore. And therefore, we are in a messy time, and it doesn't really help that we're surrounded by people that give us straight answers, because that isn't relatable. I don't feel comforted by someone going, yeah, no, the world's changing, and so really, AI is going to take over the world, so become a plumber. That is the answer. I mean, that's because I don't trust that. That's no, because we don't know that AI is going to destroy the world. But let's just have a really messy chat about it, and then people they'll take away their truth from what they hear. They should discern whether they think you're talking bollocks or some of it's true. And I just think that is a very creative conversation. There, I brought it around.
Yeah, nicely done. And also, side note, talking bollocks would be a great name for a podcast.
I mean, wouldn't it? Trouble is, the data would say it's too vague. It doesn't, it's not,
right.
This is the trouble.
Right. It's that time. We've reached the last question. It's the same final question that every guest is asked. Are you, Mark, awaiting approval?
Oh my God. I love that question. It's very big, but I'm going to try and give a small answer. Yes. If I was being honest, I think I am. I think I would like not to be. I would like to be able to give myself approval. I think that would be a beautiful answer to be able to give. And maybe that's what I would hope for at some point. Maybe my last breath will be approved. But I think for now, I think there's too many there's too many other people in my life that, whether it's work people or audiences or family or friends, that I still want to be of service to, and therefore would want their approval of me doing that. And that I think I still need to know I'm doing that and I'm doing it right. I think there's a I don't want to say it's ego. I think it's deeper than that. Is there anything deeper than ego? But it feels deeper than that. The approval is just, I really do want to get it right. I don't know if that's possible, but yeah, I am waiting approval. But I have enjoyed doing this podcast.
Good. Good. This is your opportunity to sort of hot ones style, this camera, or the one camera you've got in front of you. Like, how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah.
What links and things do you want to share?
I mean, I don't do a lot of social media. I'm on all of them. I use my own name. So I am on Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't post much, but I'm always happy for people to reach out. Again, it doesn't even need to be work stuff. I think sometimes it's just nice to say hello. And then in my professional capacity, UKTV, not that any of this probably is linked to that, I am contactable. Again, reach out to me on LinkedIn. But yeah, that's it. I don't have anything to hawk. I haven't written a book. I've just done an album, but I'm not releasing it, so I can't even tell people to check that out. Watch my shows there. Anything on UKTV, watch them. There you go.
We found it.
We found
this is like quite apart from the most important thing, which is it's really lovely to catch up with a friend again. I really appreciate the insights you've given here, the candidness that you've approached everything, and the honesty and the vulnerability that you've approached all the questions with. I feel certain that there is so much gold here for people listening to either directly link with or make them think about where they are and who they are and how they are. That I really genuinely appreciate you giving me and the show and the listeners and viewers this time. So thank you so much.
And I throw that back at you. It's great to remember what a lovely guy you are, and I've really enjoyed it. I do like the sound of my own voice, so this has just proven this is a great outlet for me, I think. No, it's just been great, and I wish you all the success with the rest of the series or the next series. And I hope people got something out of it. But thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're feeling stuck or want to think out loud about where you're heading, remember that you don't have to figure that all out on your own. I offer a free 15-minute conversation to anyone who wants help figuring out what's in front of them. Whether that leads to us working together or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you have someone in your corner, even if it's just for those 15 minutes. Head to growwithadamjennings.com and book your call. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the show so that you don't miss the rest of season 3. There is some absolute gold coming your way. So until next time, keep creating, keep questioning, and above all else, keep going.